The worst decision of my life began with a polite knock on a glass office door. My name is Ethan Parker, and at 24, I believed stability was the same thing as happiness. I worked as a junior financial assistant at Langford & Co., a firm polished enough to reflect your insecurities back at you. I wore tailored suits I couldn't afford and smiled through meetings where men twice my age discussed numbers that felt bigger than my future. What they didn't see was the overdue rent notice folded inside my briefcase. Noah Carter did. Noah and I had been together for 3 years. He was warmth where I was restrained, impulsive where I was cautious. When he lost his marketing job 2 months earlier, he laughed it off at first, promising it was temporary. But job applications turned into silence, and silence turned into tension. The air in our apartment felt thinner each week. "I'll figure it out," Noah would say. So would I, but figures were my job, and the math didn't lie. That was the night Mr. Victor Langford asked to see me after hours. Victor Langford didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His authority lived in the way assistants straightened when he passed. His office overlooked the city, all glass and shadow, and when I stepped inside, I felt like I was being evaluated rather than invited. "Sit down, Ethan," he said, folding his hands with deliberate calm. I did. He didn't speak about work. Instead, he studied me the way one might assess a risky investment. "You're reliable," he said. "Discreet, and you present yourself well." "Thank you, sir," I replied, unsure where this was going. He stood and walked toward the window, city lights outlining his silhouette. "My son," he began, "is in need of stability." I had heard rumors about Adrian Langford. 22. Expelled from one university, withdrawn from another. Photographed leaving nightclubs. Articles framed him as reckless, entitled, volatile. What does that have to do with me? I asked carefully. Victor turned, his expression unreadable. Adrian requires someone grounded, someone responsible, someone who can influence him. A quiet unease settled in my stomach. "You want me to mentor him?" I offered. "No," he said evenly. "I want you to date him." The word lingered in the air between us. "I'm not sure I understand." "You will spend time with him. Publicly, privately, attend events together, encourage discipline, present the image of a healthy relationship." His voice never wavered. "In exchange, you will be compensated." Compensated. My pulse quickened. This would be a contractual arrangement, Victor continued. 6 months. Discretion is mandatory. "You're asking me to pretend to be in a relationship with your son," I said, forcing the absurdity into words. "I'm asking you to provide structure in his life. You are suitable." The insult was subtle. Suitable. Replaceable. "I have a partner," I said before I could stop myself. Victor's eyes sharpened slightly. "I'm aware." That answer chilled me. "This would not interfere," he added. "It is business. Business. As if emotions could be itemized and taxed. "And if I refuse?" I asked. He returned to his desk, picking up a folder without opening it. "Langford & Co. values loyalty. Advancement opportunities are competitive. I would hate for your promising trajectory to stall." It wasn't a threat. It was a forecast. He slid a document across the desk. I didn't need to read the exact figure to know it would erase my debt. "Clear our rent. Give Noah breathing room. Give us time. Time we desperately needed. It's temporary," Victor said. "No one is harmed, but someone would be." I thought of Noah cooking pasta in our cramped kitchen, humming off-key. I thought of the way he reached for my hand in crowded streets. I thought of the arguments about money, about exhaustion, about feeling like we were drowning. What if this saved us? It would only be appearances. I asked. "Appearances," Victor confirmed. My conscience whispered that nothing about this was clean. That lies, even strategic ones, stain everything they touch. But fear is louder than conscience when you're counting coins. I picked up the pen. For a moment, I hesitated, staring at my reflection in the glossy surface of the desk. I barely recognized the man staring back. "I expect professionalism," Victor said. "Professionalism." I signed. The ink dried quickly, binding me to a stranger I had never met and a deception I had already begun. As I left the office, contract folded inside my jacket, my phone buzzed. A message from Noah. "Miss you. Don't work too late." I stared at the screen longer than necessary. I told myself this was just an arrangement. A performance. A sacrifice for something bigger. I told myself I wasn't selling my heart. I didn't realize I had just put it up for auction. I met Adrian Langford 3 days after I signed the contract that quietly rewrote my morals. Victor Langford arranged the introduction at the family's townhouse, a structure that looked less like a home and more like a monument to restraint. I arrived precisely on time, reminding myself that this was professional, controlled, temporary. Adrian was none of those things. He was leaning against the grand piano in the sitting room when I walked in, sleeves pushed up, dark hair falling carelessly across his forehead. He didn't look reckless, he looked bored. "So," Adrian said without offering his hand, "you're the upgrade." I blinked. "I'm Ethan. I know who you are," he replied, eyes sharp and assessing. "Dad doesn't do anything without a background check." There was no hostility in his tone, only curiosity wrapped in sarcasm. Victor stood a few feet away, watching us like an investor evaluating market volatility. "I'll leave you two to talk," he said, then exited with calculated indifference. The silence that followed felt less like awkwardness and more like a test. Adrian walked toward me slowly. "How much is he paying you?" The directness stunned me. "I'm not here for that," I lied. His lips curved faintly. "That's not what I asked." I held his gaze. "I'm here to get to know you." Adrian studied me for a moment longer, then shrugged. "Fine. Let's get coffee. Public place. Let's give him a show." That was how it began, not with romance, but with performance. Our first few outings were choreographed appearances. A charity luncheon, a gallery opening, a dinner with business associates who pretended not to stare. I learned how to place my hand lightly at Adrian's lower back, how to lean close enough to imply intimacy without crossing into truth. Adrian played along flawlessly. He smiled when cameras flashed. He laughed at comments that weren't funny. He introduced me as his boyfriend with effortless confidence. But in the quiet moments between public scenes, his mask slipped. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" he asked one evening as we walked along the riverfront after an event. "I'm not pretending," I replied automatically. He stopped walking. "That's impressive. I usually need at least 3 drinks." His honesty unsettled me. We began spending time together outside the staged obligations. It was easier than I expected. Adrian was observant, incisive, unexpectedly thoughtful. He asked questions no one else did. "What do you actually want, Ethan?" he asked during a late-night drive. The question caught me off guard. "Stability. That's not a want," he said softly. "That's survival." I didn't answer, because he was right. At home, Noah noticed the shift before I did. "You've been distant," Noah said one night as we sat across from each other at the kitchen table. His voice wasn't accusatory, just tired. "Work's intense," I replied. "That's not what I meant." I avoided his eyes. The lie didn't feel dramatic. It felt practical, necessary, but something fragile cracked between us in that moment. Back with Adrian, the distance between performance and authenticity began to blur. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner with Victor, Adrian drove us to a quiet overlook outside the city. The skyline glittered below like a promise neither of us trusted. "He thinks you're fixing me," Adrian said, staring ahead. "I'm not trying to fix you." Quote, "Then what are you trying to do?" I considered the contract, the money, the careful lines I had sworn not to cross. "I'm trying to understand you," I said. He turned toward me then, really looking at me for the first time without sarcasm as armor. "You're different with me," he said. "How? You don't look at me like I'm a liability." The vulnerability in his voice shifted something inside me. "You're not," I said quietly. The space between us narrowed, not physically at first, but emotionally. The air felt charged, uncertain. Adrian's hand brushed mine on the center console. It could have been accidental. It wasn't. Neither of us moved away. "Is this still business?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I should have said yes. I should have drawn the boundary that would protect Noah, protect myself, protect the illusion that I was in control. Instead, I hesitated. And in hesitation, truth grows. Adrian leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to stop him. His breath was warm, tentative, searching. When his lips met mine, the kiss wasn't aggressive or reckless. It was questioning. And I answered. I didn't pull away. The city lights blurred beyond the windshield, and for a moment, I forgot contracts, consequences, and the quiet man waiting for me at home. When Adrian finally drew back, his eyes searched mine for regret. He didn't find it. "That didn't feel fake," he said. "No, it didn't." And that was the moment I stopped pretending. The first time I stayed the night with Adrian Langford, it wasn't planned. That's the lie I told myself. We had attended another suffocating dinner at Victor Langford's estate, where conversations were measured and affection was currency. Adrian endured it with practiced indifference, but I could feel the tension in the rigid set of his shoulders. When we left, he didn't drive toward the city. "Stay," he said quietly as we pulled into his apartment garage. "Just for a while. I should have thought of Noah. I should have thought of the version of myself who once believed loyalty was non-negotiable." Instead, I followed Adrian upstairs. His apartment was minimalist but not impersonal. Books stacked carelessly, a half-finished canvas near the window. Evidence of someone trying to define himself outside his father's shadow. "You don't have to keep performing," Adrian said once the door closed behind us. "Not here." "I'm not performing," I replied, but the words lacked conviction. Adrian stepped closer, searching my face as if looking for cracks. "Then tell me this isn't real." Silence stretched between us, heavy and revealing. "It's complicated," I said. Complicated is just another word for fear. His honesty disarmed me. He wasn't reckless, he was desperate to be seen without conditions. "I didn't expect this," I admitted. "Neither did I," Adrian said. "But I don't want you because my father hired you. I want you because when you're with me, you're not calculating." That struck deeper than he knew. I kissed him first this time. What followed wasn't driven by impulse alone, it was built from weeks of restrained emotion finally breaking its boundaries. Every touch carried intention, every breath carried risk. I wasn't just crossing a line, I was erasing it. Later, lying beside him in the dim glow of the city beyond the windows, guilt crept in quietly. Noah would be asleep by now. "Stay," Adrian murmured, tracing absent patterns on my arm. "I shouldn't." "Do you love him?" Adrian asked. The question cut cleanly. "Yes," I answered. Adrian absorbed that without flinching. "And what do you feel when you're here?" I hesitated again, and that hesitation was its own confession. "I feel awake." Adrian didn't smile. He looked relieved. I didn't go home that night. The next morning, I showered in Adrian's bathroom while my phone buzzed repeatedly on the counter. 3 missed calls from Noah. 2 messages. "Are you okay? Please just tell me you're safe." The concern in his words felt heavier than accusation. I texted back a lie about working late and falling asleep at the office. The ease with which I typed it frightened me. From that point forward, my life fractured into parallel narratives. With Noah, I played the devoted partner navigating career pressure. I kissed him hello. I asked about his job search. I held him when anxiety crept into his voice. With Adrian, I allowed myself honesty stripped of pretense. We talked about art, about expectations, about what it meant to live under someone else's design. He began speaking about the future in tentative phrases. "When this contract ends," Adrian said one evening, "what happens to us?" The contract. I had almost forgotten it existed. Victor hadn't. He summoned me back to his office a week later, his expression colder than usual. "You've grown close," he observed without greeting. "We're progressing," I replied carefully. This was meant to be corrective, not emotional. Quote, "I'm maintaining appearances," I said. Victor's gaze sharpened. "My son is not an experiment for your self-discovery, Ethan." The irony almost made me laugh. "He's improving," I added. "I'm extending the arrangement," Victor said. "An additional 6 months. The compensation will double." The offer landed like a weight. More money, more time, more lies. "I'll consider it," I said. "You'll accept it," Victor replied evenly. "You need this." He wasn't wrong, but the extension meant deeper entanglement. It meant delaying any reckoning. The reckoning came sooner than I expected. I was in the shower at home when Noah picked up my phone from the kitchen counter. I heard the faint chime of a message, then silence. When I stepped out, towel around my waist, Noah was standing in the doorway, my phone clenched in his hand. "Who is Adrian?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud, it was broken. My stomach dropped. "It's work," I began. "Don't," Noah said sharply. "Don't insult me." He held up the screen. A message from Adrian. "Last night meant something to me. Please tell me it meant something to you too." The room felt smaller. "How long?" Noah whispered. I opened my mouth, but the truth was tangled and ugly. "Were you going to tell me?" He pressed. "I didn't mean for this to happen." That's not an answer. Tears filled his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. "I trusted you, Ethan." "I know. Do you love him?" The same question, from different lips. I don't know, I said. That was worse than yes. Noah nodded slowly, as if absorbing a physical blow. Then I can't stay. He packed a bag with mechanical precision while I stood uselessly in the hallway. Every zipper closing sounded final. At the door, he paused. I hope whatever you're chasing was worth it, Noah said. The door shut behind him with devastating softness. The apartment felt hollow. My phone buzzed again in my hand, Adrian's name lighting up the screen. For the first time, I understood that I hadn't just risked love. I had lost it, and I still didn't know which loss would hurt more. Silence is louder after you've destroyed something. The apartment Noah and I once shared felt unfamiliar without him. His absence wasn't dramatic, it was systematic. The empty side of the closet. The missing toothbrush. The quiet where his music used to play in the mornings. Every detail reminded me that betrayal doesn't explode, it erodes. I called him twice the next day. He didn't answer. Instead, I went to work, because routine felt safer than reflection. Victor Langford was already waiting for me when I arrived. His assistant didn't bother with pleasantries. Mr. Langford will see you now. The office felt colder than usual, stripped of its polished civility. I assume there's a problem, Victor said without looking up from his desk. My personal life is not interfering with. You mistake me, he interrupted calmly. Your personal life has become the problem. He slid a tablet across the desk. On the screen was a photo, Adrian and me outside his apartment building the night Noah left. The image was intimate, unguarded. You were instructed to maintain control, Victor said. Instead, you allowed attachment. He's not a project, I replied, surprising myself. No, Victor agreed. He is my son, and I care about him. Victor's eyes hardened. You were compensated to provide structure, not affection. You can't dictate emotion. I can dictate employment. The words were delivered without hostility, which made them more precise. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately, Victor said. So is your position at Langford & Cole. The dismissal landed with sterile efficiency. This arrangement was business, Ethan. You blurred the terms. I wanted to argue, to accuse him of orchestrating the very intimacy he now condemned. But I had signed the contract. I had accepted the money. I had agreed to the lie. I left the building carrying a box of belongings that suddenly felt trivial. By evening, Adrian was at my apartment door. I went to the office, he said, stepping inside without invitation. Dad wouldn't tell me anything. What happened? I closed the door behind him. The contract's over. Adrian's expression shifted, confusion first, then something sharper. Because of us. Yes. He absorbed that in silence. I don't care about the contract, Adrian said finally. I care about you. The honesty in his voice forced me into the one conversation I had been postponing. There's something you need to know, I said. Adrian's gaze steadied on mine. When your father approached me, I didn't refuse. I know that. No, I said quietly. You don't. I agreed because of the money. Because I needed it. I told myself it was temporary. Controlled. Adrian didn't move. I had someone, I continued. His name is Noah. We were together before I met you. The silence that followed felt irreversible. You were in a relationship, Adrian said, each word measured. Yes. And you still signed. Yes. The shift in his expression wasn't explosive. It was internal, like something fundamental had recalibrated. So what was I? He asked. An assignment that got complicated. No, it stopped being that. When? I thought back to the overlook, to the first time he touched my hand. I don't know, I admitted. That's convenient, Adrian replied. His composure was more devastating than anger. Did you ever plan to tell me? He asked. I was going to. When? I had no answer. Adrian stepped back slightly, as if recalculating distance. I told you I didn't want someone who looked at me like a liability, he said. Turns out you were the risk. That's not fair, I said, though I wasn't sure it wasn't true. You chose money over honesty, Adrian continued. Then you chose me over someone who trusted you. What makes you think you won't choose something else tomorrow? The question struck deeper than any accusation. I'm trying to fix this, I said. You don't fix betrayal, Adrian replied. You survive it. He moved toward the door. Adrian, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know who you are without a contract attached. The door opened. I loved you, he added quietly. The past tense lingered between us. Then he left. The apartment was silent again, but this time the emptiness was earned. I sat on the floor, back against the couch, surrounded by remnants of a life I had dismantled piece by piece. The money from Victor still sat untouched in my account. It no longer felt like security. It felt like evidence. I had wanted stability, control, relief from pressure. Instead, I had exposed the worst parts of myself, the parts willing to rationalize betrayal as necessity. Somewhere in the city, Noah was rebuilding without me. Adrian was likely doing the same. And I was left with the uncomfortable truth that love cannot survive manipulation, not even when it begins by accident. I once believed I was being paid to perform. In the end, I performed so well that I lost track of what was real. And now, for the first time in months, there was no script left to follow.